2015, ultimately sentenced to more than 200 years in prison.
In the arena of law enforcement, justice is served by holding lawbreakers responsible. However, there are times when people charged with maintaining the law are corrupted.
Holtzclaw convicted after 13 women accused him of rape.
These careless policemen then face a one-way ticket to prison. Here are 10 corrupt cops currently rotting in jail.
Officer Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck after Floyd had become unresponsive.
Number 1. Marcus Eberhard. A terrifying tragedy occurred in East Point, Michigan in 2019, drawing worldwide notice and generating debate over the use of force by law officers. Marcus Eberhard, a former police officer, became embroiled in controversy after deploying a taser on William Marshall, who was 38 during an arrest. This event highlighted the complicated issues surrounding the use of force by those tasked with keeping the peace. Eberhard, a former police officer, faced the repercussions of his conduct, which resulted in the terrible demise of William Marshall. Despite the fact that he had no past disciplinary proceedings, Eberhard had a reputation for being confrontational. William Marshall, on the other hand, had a history of drug usage and non-violent charges, putting a contrasting perspective on the persons involved. The trial that followed revealed disturbing information about the incident. Eberhard's use of the taser on Marshall lasted an astounding 40 seconds, considerably above the permitted period according to departmental regulations. The prosecution contended that Eberhard's disproportionate use of force directly contributed to Marshall's early demise, making him responsible for the tragedy. In his defense, Eberhard said that he followed his training, noting Marshall's past narcotics abuse and underlying health concerns as reasons. A jury convicted Eberhard guilty of involuntary manslaughter and malfeasance in office in February 2022, resulting in a landmark conviction. The decision emphasized the importance of responsibility and repercussions when those in positions of authority abuse their power. Eberhard's reaction to the decision was reserved as he awaited his sentence hearing on May 2022. Within the courtroom, his initial reaction remained a mystery. His legal counsel, on the other hand, voiced discontent with the verdict, hinting at the potential of an appeal. Following that, during the sentencing phase, the court sentenced Eberhard to life in prison, underlining the seriousness of his conduct and its repercussions. In an unexpected change of events, Eberhard made a statement expressing regret for his part in the unfortunate occurrence. He expressed real regret and accepted full responsibility for his acts, acknowledging the terrible impact his actions had on Marshall's family. He expressed heartfelt hope that the family will find consolation and closure in the midst of their grief. Marcus Eberhard's story serves as a sharp reminder of the authority and duty that comes with wearing a police badge. Number 2. Michael Neely. Michael Neely, who was an experienced police officer, unfortunately, found himself in the midst of a nightmare situation that would permanently alter the direction of his life in a bewildering and sad series of events. The story begins with Michael being discovered in a hotel room atop the deceased body of his police chief and mentor, Johnny Miller. The setting for this terrifying moment was a meeting that took the two co-workers from their familiar Tulsa surroundings to the colorful metropolis of Pensacola. What began as a desire for a relaxing night developed into a series of events that defied understanding. The story begins with Neely and Miller going out for a seemingly benign evening, looking for nothing more than a few beers and maybe the thrill of a football game. In the end, the police chief's lifeless body was found, but the truth under the surface was considerably more complicated. As the inquiry progressed, it became clear that both men's blood alcohol levels had gone beyond the crucial threshold of 0.3, indicating extreme drunkenness. To put this into perspective, a level of 0.4 is sometimes lethal, emphasizing the serious threat their drunken state faced. While Neely's memory was foggy, it was clear that the evening had gone well beyond football and a few beers. Neely's own lack of recall provided a huge barrier to putting together the riddle when he faced interrogation. To uncover the facts, the detectives working on the case used a twofold method. First, they made Neely aware of the terrible repercussions of his actions, emphasizing the importance of his cooperation. The second strategy entailed appealing to Neely's natural curiosity and desire to discover the truth. The investigators urged Neely to participate in discourse by adopting a more collaborative tone, bringing him closer to admitting his participation in the tragedy. The more Neely participated, the more he realized that his actions, although under the influence, had cost his chief's life. Neely's tone changed dramatically throughout the tense encounter. The first shock and perplexity gave way to a solemn awareness of the gravity of his conduct. Neely's story developed in the face of accumulating evidence and the investigator's relentless resolve, exposing layers of reality hidden behind his inebriated haze. In the end, Neely's path took him from a state of denial to a terrible realization. In the year 2019, the detective was sentenced to life in prison. Number 3. Daniel Holtzclaw. Daniel Holtzclaw's life took a tragic turn on December 1986 in Guam, leading him to a courtroom to face the repercussions of his horrible deeds. Eric Holtzclaw, his father, was a lieutenant in the Enid Police Department. Daniel's adventure began as a linebacker at Enid High School, when he established a school record for tackles in a game. Holtzclaw pursued a career in professional football after graduating from Eastern Michigan University with a criminal justice degree in 2010. Despite his ambitions, he ended up working for the Oklahoma City Police Department. His tenure as an officer, however, would be tainted by a distressing series of occurrences. Holtzclaw's conduct deteriorated after he was found guilty of attacking many women, most of whom were from low-income regions of the city. Investigations indicated that he targeted women with outstanding warrants or criminal backgrounds, taking advantage of his position. The anxiety in the courtroom was apparent as Holtzclaw awaited his punishment after being convicted of 18 crimes. Holtzclaw's emotions were obvious as the jury suggested a staggering 263-year jail sentence. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he shook as he realized the enormity of his actions. With the substantial sentence, the victims, cops, and attorneys engaged in the case were relieved. Kim Davis, the lead investigator who had supported the victims throughout the investigation, expressed her happiness, underlining that she wanted to guarantee he didn't escape. Sherry Dickerson, a continuous presence during the trial, felt a range of emotions. While she recognized the devastation Holtzclaw's activities had caused in his life, she believed that he might be rehabilitated, potentially serving as a guide to others to modify their predatory behavior. Holtzclaw locked eyes with his victims as they read their impact statements at his sentencing. The victims, on the other hand, refused to give him the gratification of their attention. Holtzclaw had once been a respected police officer, but his decisions had taken him down a dark path. He faced life in jail for his horrible acts at the age of 29, displaying tremendous sorrow for his conduct and the heavy penalties he now faced. Number 4. Grant Harden. Grant Harden, a former police officer, was arrested on suspicion of taking someone's life in an unexpected turn of events. An inquiry into a recent homicide led cops to a terrifying truth stretching back over a decade. The story is set in the little town of Gateway, Arkansas, where a horrible crime occurred. James Appleton's lifeless body was discovered in his automobile, having received a fatal gunshot wound. After hearing a loud noise, witnesses noticed a white Chevrolet Malibu rush away from the site. Grant Harden, a 50-year-old police officer, was the owner of that vehicle. Grant Harden's background as a former police officer brought a degree of intricacy to the interrogation procedure as the inquiry progressed. Detective Chamberlain opened the inquiry, hoping to establish confidence by citing their common law enforcement history. Grant, on the other hand, elected to keep silent, asserting his right to do so. Despite having his rights read to him, Grant refused to disclose any information. The investigators tried a variety of tactics, including allowing him to meet his family and engaging him in informal chats about TV shows and sleep habits. Despite brief intervals of dialogue, Grant finally remained silent, confounding the detectives. During the inquiry, a critical witness recognized Grant at the crime site. This identification, together with Grant's actions throughout the interview, raised concerns. Detective Cordiero made a sincere attempt to connect with Grant, recalling previous law enforcement experiences. Even as they reminisced, Grant remained evasive about the day's events. As the police continued their investigation, Grant's unwillingness to speak took an unexpected turn. His DNA matched evidence from a 20-year-old unresolved case. A teacher was attacked in 1997, but the case was closed. Grant's DNA has been in the system under an unknown identity. This revelation gave his persona a nasty edge. Grant eventually pled guilty in James Appleton's case, leaving the victim's family with no obvious cause. He was also convicted guilty of the previous attack, resulting in a total sentence of 35 years. The case demonstrated the delicate and difficult nature of criminal investigations, in which even experienced law enforcement agents might use their knowledge of legal rights to their advantage. Grant Hardin's story serves as a reminder that justice may be a long and winding path, with truths buried for years resurfacing in unexpected ways. Number 5. Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin, a former Minneapolis police officer, became a national disgrace because his actions resulted in the tragic death of George Floyd. The footage of Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes during an arrest triggered global protests against police violence and racial inequality. Chauvin grew up in the Twin Cities and attended Park High School in Cottage Grove. He was a member of the school football squad. Following high school, he attended Normandale Community College before moving to Metropolitan State University, where he earned a bachelor's degree in law enforcement in 2006. Chauvin joined the Minneapolis Police Department in the year 2001 and rose through the ranks to become a field training officer in the year 2008. Despite his tenure, Chauvin was the subject of 18 complaints during his time with the police. Only 2 of these complaints, however, resulted in disciplinary action. He was involved in many use-of-force events, including one in 2017, in which he was one of the cops who took the life of a suspect. On May 25, 2020, Chauvin and 3 other police were responding to a complaint about a guy attempting to use a counterfeit $20 note. This interaction resulted in a disastrous incident with George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man. Floyd was handcuffed and placed face down on the ground. Despite Floyd's repeated protests that he couldn't breathe, Chauvin's continued squatting on Floyd's neck ended in Floyd's untimely demise. Outrage, protests, and cries for justice erupted in response to the occurrence. Chauvin was found guilty on all 3 charges following a carefully watched trial. His bail was canceled and he was arrested, and given a sentence of 22.5 years in jail with credit for time served. He was also facing federal accusations of violating Floyd's civil rights. Chauvin's reaction to his punishment was reserved. While removing his disguise, he expressed sympathies to the Floyd family but did not show regret for his conduct. He also filed an appeal, claiming that the jury was prejudiced and that the trial was unjust. The reactions to Chauvin's sentence were mixed. Some thought the punishment was too light and that he should have gotten a harsher sentence. Others thought the line was acceptable, implying that no police officer is above the law. Overall, Chauvin's trial and subsequent imprisonment constituted a watershed event in the United States' continuous struggle against racial injustice. Number 6. Roy Oliver. Roy Oliver, a white former Texas police officer, was convicted of taking an innocent life in the year 2017. Oliver, who was 38 at the time of the event, was convicted of fatally firing into a car containing unarmed black teens, taking the life of Jordan Edwards, who was 15 at the time. The trial began with Oliver facing accusations of discharging his gun into a vehicle full of young people. As the court debated the allegations of murder and aggravated attack, the destiny of the former police officer hung in the balance. The jury, made up of Dallas County residents, deliberated for nearly 12 hours over 2 days before reaching a decision. Roy Oliver was eventually convicted guilty of his acts that night. He was judged responsible for firing into the automobile, which sadly took the life of Jordan Edwards. He was, however, acquitted on 2 counts of aggravated attack for rounds fired at the automobile transporting the group of kids. The trial revealed horrifying facts about the circumstances leading up to the fatal shooting. Jordan Edwards was sitting in the front passenger seat, attempting to exit the party when the event occurred. The fatal bullet impacted him in the back of the head. Oliver's argument focused on his assertion that he fired in reaction to a danger to his partner, Officer Tyler Gross. Oliver stated that he thought Gross was in danger since the automobile looked to be heading for him. Officer Gross, on the other hand, refuted this story. He stated that he never thought his life was in danger and hence saw no reason to discharge his weapon. Roy Oliver was arrested shortly after his conviction and his bond was withdrawn. The hearings were far from complete as the jury had to decide on Oliver's sentencing. Before making a choice, they sought input from Jordan's family, friends, and instructors. As the jury made a decision, the emotional weight of the trial was obvious. The verdict brought a collective sigh of relief to Edward's family, who had undergone a difficult year. Jordan's father, Odell Edwards, conveyed the family's feelings, saying, "It's been a long time, hard year, and we're just really happy. We finished it." As Oliver faced 15 years behind bars, the weight of justice hung heavily in the air. Notably, his own sister had earlier stated her desire that he get the maximum sentence. Number 7, Michael Dautro. Michael Dautro was once a brilliant star within the local police force in the bustling town of Edison, New Jersey. He joined the force in the year 2003 and quickly rose through the ranks, eventually achieving the rank of Sergeant 2011. Dautro was lauded during his term for his unrelenting dedication to the community. However, his illustrious career came to an end in 2017 when he was charged with various crimes. Dautro's demise was sudden and startling. In the year 2017, he pled guilty to federal charges of attempted obstruction of justice and witness tampering. In his admission of guilt, Dautro admitted to breaching not just the law, but also the public's faith in him as a law enforcement official. The sentencing day arrived in the year 2019, marking a watershed moment for Dautro. He petitioned for pardon in court, emphasizing his previous record of good behavior and his sincere wish to be a caring father to his children. The judge, on the other hand, remained steadfast, highlighting the seriousness of Dautro's misdeeds and his violation of public trust. The court refused to be convinced by Dautro's professions of contrition and imposed a harsh 20-year federal prison sentence. Dautro's manner was eerily emotionless throughout the trial and punishment. He wore a green prison uniform and kept a calm and distant look, showing no outward emotion to the judge's decision. Many onlookers were perplexed by his lack of sorrow, expecting some expression of regret or acknowledgement of the gravity of his acts. Dautro's stoicism added to the gravity of his acts. While he acknowledged betraying his family and community and professed regret, his behavior called his apologies into question. The gap between his words and his lack of emotional response underscored the enormous difficulties in reconciling his conduct with his declarations of sorrow. Dautro's case echoed well beyond the confines of the courtroom. His downfall stunned the Edison Police Department, which was already under investigation for suspicions of corruption and misbehavior. The department's handling of the matter was criticized because numerous officers involved in the conspiracy were permitted to retire or leave before facing disciplinary action. The issue also sparked larger discussions about the critical need for increased accountability and supervision in New Jersey law enforcement. Number 8, Aaron Dean. Aaron Dean, a former cop whose acts drew global notice. He was involved in a terrible event in Fort Worth, Texas, that culminated in the shooting and demise of Tatiana Jefferson, a 28-year-old woman. On October 12, 2019, Dean attended to a non-emergency call to Jefferson's mother's house where she was caring for her nephew. Aaron Dean worked as a detective in the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport Department, focused on public safety, before joining the Fort Worth Police Department. He had a very great disciplinary record during his tenure. The events of that fateful night, however, exposed another aspect of his activities. The shooting violated several police department standards, including those governing the use of force and de-escalation techniques. Dean resigned from the Fort Worth Police Department shortly after the event. As a result, he was detained and charged. During the trial on August 2021, a Tarrant County jury convicted Aaron Dean guilty of a lesser felony, which carried a maximum sentence of 2 to 20 years in prison under Texas law. Tatiana Jefferson's relatives addressed Dean during the sentencing hearing on October 14, 2021, expressing their sadness and loss. Jefferson's sister, Ashley Carr, characterized her as a blooming flower pulled down too soon. She also testified on behalf of their mother, who had passed away shortly before Dean's conviction. Dean remained stoic as the court handed down his sentence of 11 years and 10 months in jail, much above the normal punishment for such instances in Texas. Dean's lack of emotion when the statement was read aloud may be construed in a variety of ways. Some may see it as a lack of regret or comprehension of the significance of his acts, while others may argue that he was attempting to keep composure in the midst of a highly charged situation. Deciphering the genuine feelings underneath his behavior is difficult, notably about police rules, revealing his unsuitability for a career in law enforcement. The Aaron Dean case serves as a tragic reminder of the country's ongoing problems with police violence and racial injustice. While his conviction and subsequent punishment bring some peace to Tatiana Jefferson's family, the tragedy highlights the continuous battle for justice and responsibility in police enforcement. Number 9. Zachary Wester. Zachary Wester hid a deadly truth beneath the facade of a sheriff's deputy uniform in Jackson County, Florida, that would break the faith of his co-workers and the whole town. The former deputy's addiction to the power that came with his position led him down a dangerous road of misusing authority, ending in his conviction on various crimes including racketeering, official misconduct, lying, forging evidence, and possession of prohibited narcotics. Wester's heinous path began at 2 and 16, when he began unfairly targeting innocent motorists during regular traffic encounters and falsely putting drugs on them. His nasty activities, however, did not go undetected. A victim of Wester's scams filed a complaint, prompting an investigation into his conduct. This investigation uncovered a disturbing truth. Wester has been placing narcotics on unsuspecting victims for years. His manipulating reign came to an end in 2019 with his arrest. A further investigation into Wester's past revealed a turbulent history. He had already been fired from a Florida law enforcement agency for failing to fulfill the agency's criteria. Despite this warning signal, he was able to gain a post as a deputy in Jackson County, throwing suspicion on the department's recruiting procedure. Throughout his trial, Wester steadfastly maintained his innocence, stating he had been framed and had never put illicit chemicals on anybody. However, the evidence presented in court was devastating, and the jury found him guilty on all 19 charges. The deletion of some body camera video, which he couldn't explain, added to the weight of his guilt. He boldly continued his deceit, claiming responsibility for the drugs discovered even as the evidence against him grew. Wester's composure during the trial shocked observers. His arrogance and dismissiveness conveyed an air of indifference to the seriousness of his conduct. Wester showed no remorse in front of several of his victims, being more concerned with protecting his own image than facing the repercussions of his acts. Wester was sentenced to 12 years in jail and fined over $100,000. The ripple effect of his deception spread across Jackson County and beyond, creating a passionate desire for responsibility and fairness in the criminal justice system. Number 10. Eric DeValcaneri. In the year 2019, former police detective Eric DeValcaneri was sentenced to 6 years in prison for the lethal attack on Cameron Lamb. DeValcaneri and his colleague were responding to a traffic incident involving a red pickup truck in Kansas City when the event occurred. Officers came to a house and entered the backyard without a warrant. They confronted an escalating crisis while dressed in ordinary clothing and wearing police department vests. Cameron Lamb was gently reversing the pickup truck down a ramp into the underground garage when DeValcaneri opened fire with 4 rounds. According to the officer, he observed Lamb's left hand grab for a firearm and felt a threat to his colleague. Lamb tragically died at the site. DeValcaneri described the events throughout the trial, oftentimes breaking down in tears. On November 2021, a judge issued a guilty conviction in a bench trial. The punishment includes 3 years in prison for involuntary homicide and 6 years in prison for armed criminal conduct, to be served consecutively. DeValcaneri defense counsel requested his release while appealing his conviction, providing some temporary relief. Judge James Dale Youngs approved this request, stating that jail was not necessary throughout the appeals process. The phrase elicited a powerful reaction. With his palm on the desk, DeValcaneri expressed astonishment and dismay. Lori Bay, Cameron Lamb's mother, on the other hand, characterized the judgment as fair. She did, however, emphasize that the emotional suffering she is experiencing will continue. Akil Bey, Lam's stepfather, hoped that the punishment would serve as a wake-up message to the Kansas City Police Department. This incident brought to the forefront debates about police violence and racial profiling. It highlighted the disproportionately negative impact of police brutality on Black Americans, prompting many to regard it as yet another instance of law enforcement's institutional racism. Eric's rationale for his conduct, alleging he saw Lam grab for a pistol, sparked heated controversy. Critics claimed that this was only an excuse for using disproportionate force and that non-lethal ways of subduing Lam should have been sought. When the facts are considered, the fact that Lam was carefully pulling his truck into the garage begs the question of whether he represented an immediate threat. It implies that cops had a window of opportunity to assess the situation before resorting to fatal means. The event has sparked debate on the appropriate use of force, police training, and the necessity for significant change in law enforcement.